In my last community devotional, I talked about the Great Commission where we're called, actually commanded, to make disciples of all the nations. It sounds overwhelming when I say it that way. But when we start where we live and where we work and listen to what God calls us, that's all we're required to do. Today I'm going to look at the parable of the sower and connect it to the process of making disciples. Just like I did in talking about the Great Commission, I'm going to use canoeing as an illustration. Jesus tells the parable of the sower at the side of the Sea of Galilee. He's sitting in a boat. He told them many things in parables, saying a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on the rocky ground, where they did not have much soil. And immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. As Jesus told this, the disciples were confused and they didn't understand it. And they actually asked him to explain it. So later in the passage, he goes on and explains it. He says, "Hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the words of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. As for that which was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what is sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. As for what is sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields in one case 100-fold, and another 60, and another 30. And looking at the parable, there's 4 settings in which the word of God is sown. In the first setting, the person never comes to a point of faith because the word of God is snatched away. But in the next 3 settings, the person comes to faith, but the process of bearing fruit there's obstacles. The unfortunate reality is that we want to be the 4th soil, where we bear fruit, a lot of fruit. But there's obstacles in the process. Jesus says that affliction and persecution, because of our faith, and the deceitfulness of wealth prevents fruitfulness. These forces are present in all of our lives, and they have a negative impact on us and on our faith. But I don't think we have to wring our hands in despair and quit. I don't think we can use this excuse saying, well, it's not my fault. It's just the soil I was planted in. Let me try to illustrate this with canoeing. If you come canoeing with me, I'm going to encourage you to bring some water and some snacks. I'm going to give you a life jacket and have you wear it. But in addition to that, I'm going to give you a paddle. You see, because when we move away from the shore, the canoe isn't just a neutral presence. The current and the wind work against the canoe, seeking to push it where it wants to go. The current takes us in one direction, the wind may take us in another direction. In order to get to where we want to go, we have to use our paddle. We have to exert effort and energy to overcome the forces of the wind and the current. In the same way, we have to apply force to overcome the currents of affliction and persecution and worries and the deceitfulness in our life. We have to learn to paddle. Success in our work world, in our relationship world, in our families, in every arena of life requires that we learn to paddle. We need to put forth effort and energy into getting to where we want to go. The same is true of our spiritual life. Our efforts in our spiritual practices and in our communal practices of gathering with others for personal support, encouragement, and accountability are essential to getting to where we want to go. It's not a neutral process. We have to work at it. We have to paddle. I'm excited about this summer's reading and discussion group on disciple making because disciple making is a setting where we learn to help ourselves but also help others to be successful, to be fruitful. My hope is that we learn to paddle well, that we overcome the forces that fight against us, and that we bear much fruit. It's a process, and I hope you join me in that process.